This episode is for Friday, May 20th, 2016. Welcome, Crater fans. I'm your host, Josh Owens, along with a special guest co-host.
Hi, I'm Lauren.
Hey, Lauren. Welcome to the show, man.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
So, Abby had a last-minute emergency come up, and Lauren agreed to step in. So I really appreciate that, man.
Tell me he's working too hard.
Yeah, it's not work related, sadly. But,
okay.
Yeah. So I've got a pink and blue beard today. If you're watching on YouTube, if you're not, you can go check it out anyway and see it. It's the kids requested I do it for a little carnival they have here in the small town we live in. So, fun stuff.
I think it looks good.
Yeah. Yes, it's getting a little patchy though. It was pretty solid before, but it's starting to rub out. It's all chalk, so pretty easy to put on. So I think before we get into it, why don't you tell people what you do, Lauren?
I am CTO at a social app startup called Parlay for making social wagers with your friends. I also do some freelancing, and then I'm a maintainer on Meteor Core, and then on the docs and the guide repos. Nice.
Do you actually have commit rights to Meteor?
I do. Yeah, they said don't use it, but what I've done is I made a patch branch. I created a branch on the, but I haven't like touched Devel.
Interesting. Nice. That's pretty cool. Yeah. So, and you guys were involved in something interesting that launched this week, which didn't get enough upvotes, but I thought it's worth mentioning.
Yeah. So there's a new redesign of the core Meteor docs, and then also of the guide. It's done with Hexo, which is like Jekyll, Ruby static site generator that's used for GitHub pages, but this is like a JavaScript version of Jekyll. And it looks really nice. Dominic Nguyen from MDG did the design. And it's much easier to contribute because previously docs was inside the Meteor core repo, and it was a Meteor app. And so like if you wanted to change it, you'd have to do a PR to Meteor core, which probably didn't get merged. And so now it's in a separate repository. It's no longer a Meteor app. It's the Hexo, so it's static HTML, and that means it doesn't crash your mobile phone. That was a problem I had. Crashed Safari and Chrome on iOS, and I will probably soon merge your PR because I have rights and it's separated and stuff.
Nice. Yeah. That's awesome. Yeah, so I thought it was exciting as well. Like I like the new design. The font's a little small, but I think that's a common complaint I have on most Meteor sites. But
someone just submitted an issue, so we might talk about it.
Yeah, I don't. It's one of those things. Like I can also font bump if it's really bothering me, but just even a little small. But I like it. I miss the little search functionality, but you pointed out there's an issue for that too.
It's coming back. Yeah, Tom's going to do it, I think.
Exciting.
So the big CTA, the call to action for that is if there's anything in the docs or the guide that's not clear, submit an issue, submit a PR. It should be easy to change it, fix it.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. I like it though. I like it feels more seamless between the guide and the
right. They got they're on the same sidebar.
Yep. Yeah. Exactly. Looking good. Awesome. All right. So this week we will be talking about Horizon, Meteor 1.4 roadmap. Firebase is a platform now, and React with web app, and Meteor is a backend. Thought that one would be kind of interesting. Yeah, so kind of a big news week. Google's having their I/O thing.
One day I want to go to that.
Huh?
I hear tickets are hard to get. One day I want
Yeah,
to go.
yeah.
They keep on giving away free things like the glasses and a phone and
Yeah,
yeah.
exactly. Yeah, so I think the big news. We'll get to the big news from IO in a little bit, but the other big news was Horizon is out now, so you can like npm install this thing and give it a try. I'll say like maybe 15 minutes before the show, I was reading up on it and tried the install, and even right up until we were getting started, I was trying to get Rethink DB to run right, and apparently, like I've got the right version and everything, but it says connection to Rethink DB terminated, and it can't seem to connect to the running version. So, wah, wah. I can't give you my direct thoughts on it, but what I can say is it looks interesting to me. Again, I think if Meteor were built now instead of like 3 years ago, it would look pretty similar to Horizon, in my opinion. I think they're using RxJS observables instead of writing a custom library like Tracker.
But let's back up and what is Horizon for the people who haven't heard of it?
Oh yeah. So I guess it's a direct competitor with something like Meteor or I don't know, what are some of the other ones out there? I don't know. There's no other ones.
Ember?
Ember? No.
Is that full stack, right?
Is it now?
Or is it just front end?
I don't know. I don't pay attention. I pay attention to Angular some. I pay attention to React. I don't know. Yeah, no, it's definitely, there's like a build tool kind of hooked together. It's got socket.io. It's got the database integration. They've got RxJS to kind of monitor the incoming data. So like as it updates, you'll get, you can just use the observable like you normally would and have your code update. So it's really interesting.
Okay, so it's built by the Rethink DB team.
It is. Yeah.
I sort of feel like they were like Meteor should use us for their database clearly because we are the only like native real time database, and I feel like Meteor didn't, so they had to make their own stack.
Yeah, like in all honesty, you look at the way the user accounts is kind of structured, like all that kind of stuff, like accounts base and accounts password. Like it's definitely tied heavily into Blaze, and it's definitely tied heavily into Mongo. And like this has been a common complaint for a long time. And I think that's the last piece that would have to change in order for something like Postgres or Rethink to be able to come in as a DB that you could easily integrate with. And it's just, I don't know, like I feel like maybe that project's on the back burner. I haven't looked at it in a while, but I'm watching the repo and I'm not getting any updates about it. They definitely did break out a piece of the Meteor user stuff from the main repo into its own repo. But as far as I could tell, nothing's really happening.
Maybe they might be waiting until Apollo.
Yeah, well, I think that's part of it is that they've kind of stolen away the team that would have worked on it at this point. Like I know Sashko at one point was kind of in charge of it. I don't know what his day to day looks like at MDG anymore. But they also took Martin kind of off of Meteor and put him on Apollo as well. So I don't. Maybe you're right. We'll see something come out of Apollo that gives you user integration, but based on what I see, I don't know if that's true. So
I think it's in the plans, and then everything in Apollo is database agnostic, so you should be able to do the account system on any database once they add it.
Yeah. I don't know. Like it's weird, right? Because you're gonna have a schema, and like schemas are gonna look different here or there. So
right.
It's definitely interesting trying to figure that problem out. But
so for Horizon, do they have a client-side data cache?
I don't think so. I think they're just using the RxJS observable. So when something changes, you just kind of react to it.
Okay.
No pun intended. More pun intended.
So you'd have to do your own like latency computation if you're wanted to change things on the client before changing them on the server.
I think so.
Okay.
Let's pretend.
So I was working with Slava on the Rethink DB integration with Meteor back when he got started, maybe a year ago.
Mm-hmm.
And so the big differentiator there would be that Rethink DB has native support for change feeds or having a feed of data like similar to the Mongo oplog, but granular, so you don't need to go through the whole thing. So it's going to scale much better.
Yeah.
So Slava's driver used change feeds to send new data over GDP to clients, which is really cool. But the number of queries that were change feed compatible, so like out of the entire query language requel, you can do whatever to query anything from Rethink. But only there was like a very small subset that worked with change feeds. So like your publishers were very, very limited. Like I could do like a public feed, but I wouldn't be able to do like a friend feed.
Mm.
And they were planning on improving those, but I don't know how flexible that piece has gotten.
My guess is it's probably gotten better because you're able to send a subscribe request, and then based on message coming through from the subscribe call, you can do different things. Like on replace or remove, or do they have one on like new? Yeah, I guess. Yeah, it looks like they're using like an array of like, I'm looking at chat messages, like their little example here, and they push like each result from the subscribe call onto an array, and then they're like pushing those onto, like, as things are replaced or removed, they're kind of doing various operations on that array. So yeah, I don't know. I mean, maybe it's gotten better. Certainly, I know the thing that I remember him saying he needed something in 2.2 to come along. That's when it was slated to come along, and I think it had something to do with the change feeds that you mentioned. And they're at 2.3 now, so my guess is they've definitely beefed it up, and made it so you can have a lot more stuff to query against. It's just, I think it's still early with Horizon more than anything. Like their authentication, I think they support OAuth right now, but that's really all they're doing. They plan to add more. I think they've got a couple sample apps, but it's just still early days with them. I don't know. It looks interesting to me. I think watching Feathers, watching Horizon, watching Meteor, like they're all trying slightly different things, but kind of dancing around similar ideas.
Yeah, but it's nice that they're doing auth and that they have this Horizon Cloud, which is basically going to be their equivalent of Galaxy.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, I find that interesting too, because like I hear Galaxy is going to become like a much wider just kind of Docker host at some point.
Okay.
So it's not going to be like Meteor specific. So watching another company do it, I wonder like how interesting or smart that might be for them, because again, there's no like $1 billion unicorn hosting company out there, and I don't think there ever will be. Like hosting's a commodity thing. Even when you put good services on top of it, I still think it's always just going to be a commodity, like race to the bottom pricing thing.
Okay.
I don't know.
Well, would you call DigitalOcean a hosting company?
I would, yeah, and I still don't think like they're never going to be $1 billion unicorn, are they? Like, I don't. I mean, you don't have to be, right? But I think that's what VCs are looking for. I don't think that there's I don't think Andreessen Horowitz invested $20-30 million in Meteor because hosting looked interesting, and that's why they're working on Apollo, right?
Right.
Yeah. Anyhow, Let's do the next one. Let's see.
What's up next?
What is the next one? I lost my list. Meteor 1.4 roadmap. That's what it was.
All right, so we got a blog post or a post on the forums recently.
Mm-hmm.
Coming soon, Meteor 1.4. And the big thing is Node 4. So currently, Meteor is using Node version 0.10.43, which is ancient. So we're going up to Node 4, which is pretty close to recent. There's only 2 more versions, Node 5 and 6. 5 is not a long-term
target, yeah.
And then 6 is pretty new, and lots of things don't work with it yet. So Node 4 is great. Mongo 3.2, which I think has some significant changes.
It does, yeah. Specifically, I'm kind of interested today. Like we were having a talk I was talking to a client, and Mongo 3.2, I believe, comes with like, you can turn on encryption for the data at rest. So the data that's stored in the database, you can encrypt it and let it sit there encrypted. Which, I mean, there were projects to do in something like Meteor to kind of do that for you, but to have it at the database level, I think might make a lot more sense.
You probably need that for HIPAA. Did the clinical fork already have that?
Honestly, I have no idea.
Well, another nice thing about 3.2 is that so Compose, which is one of the main MongoDB hosters, cloud hosters that people in Meteor use, has a new type of Meteor deployment. Now they have Mongo Classic and what used to be Mongo Plus, but is now their main Mongo, and that is every deployment, no matter how small, is sharded, which is challenging for the oplog. And they made this special because like I think each shard would have its own oplog or something. So they made an entry point for the oplogs to be combined or something, and that doesn't work with the current Meteor version of Mongo, which I think is 3.0, but it will work with 3.2. So you'll be able to use oplog with Compose on their current MongoDB deployments.
Yeah, so I think probably the thing here to point out as well is like there's a couple things that are actually going into this commit, because not only you're getting like you've got Mongo, as far as the driver, like what's supported, 3.0 is currently supported, right? Like you can connect to a 3.0 database fine with Meteor, not a big deal. But the thing is, by default, it still ships with 2.6. So when you're in like local development mode, and you try to do like run the query planner, like the old 2.6 doesn't have any of the query planner stuff. So that can be kind of frustrating. And you can mount up your own Mongo instance and run it, wherever you want and have Meteor connect to that. But that's kind of a pain in the butt when you're running like, I've got like 10 different client apps on my machine that I check out and run at any given time. So, yeah. But this will come, like Meteor is going to ship with Mongo 3.2 by default. So when you do Meteor run, it's going to fire up a Mongo 3.2 instance, which is super exciting to me. Like that means in local development mode, you're going to get like wired tiger support and query planner and all kinds of goodies that I think are going to be pretty awesome.
Was wired tiger 3.2?
It's 3.0.
Okay.
But yeah, so like locally you still don't get it. But like, if you look at like Crater, crazy dogs, Crater is running 3.0. I don't know if I switched to wired tiger or not. It's a good question. Yeah, so I think that's kind of exciting as well. Yeah, and then it looks like relaxing core package versions. So it looks like there's going to be less and less things kind of tied into a release. Like you won't have to have every release won't be directly tied to a version of Blaze or a version of Meteor or Mongo or whatever.
So, yeah, so they moved Blaze into a separate repository, GitHub Meteor /Blaze, that has a community maintainer. And so I think you should be able to in the future to have them release a new version, I guess, on Atmosphere, and then you can just type meteor update and not meteor update release, and it'll update just the Blaze package.
Nice.
So you could have speedier development on that.
Yeah, because I mean, I think there's some things that don't necessarily need to be like, maybe it's nice to tie together like the change log and the docs and say like 1.4 came out, here's the new changes. But at the same time, like for the community to move faster, I think these individual repos will be better. I mean, we'll see how it works out in the long run, but looks interesting. All right. So the big Google I/O news was that Firebase has been significantly expanded. So
Yeah, I had forgotten that Firebase was acquired by Google. That was like over a year ago.
Yeah, totally.
That's pretty cool.
Oh, my link broke. Yeah, so like, when you look at Firebase, I think they got acquired 18 months ago, and they had about 150,000 developers at the time, and they've grown to have like 450,000 on their platform now, which is pretty big. Like I don't think we've ever seen particular numbers out of Meteor or any of the other kind of platforms that are like this. But the thing was they had the real-time database and user authentication and like easy hosting. But they were lacking some other stuff. And so like they've basically just built this big platform around Firebase. They've got Firebase Analytics now. They've got like messaging, storage. So I think, you look at this and you think, I could probably glue a lot of this together myself. But at the same time, I think they're putting out SDKs that allow you to easily kind of tap into this if this is what you're using to run your app on the back end. And I know that there's a number of people in the React community that rely on Firebase and use it. So
yeah, I've heard a lot of usage of it, and it seems like it has been the biggest competitor to Meteor for an easy to use real time backend. And it has a whole lot of things. It's got like integrated. It's got auth. It's got messaging like push notifications. It's got deep linking into your apps. It's got like automatic in-depth analytics, crash reporting. Let's see, hosting, obviously.
What was interesting to me, there was a conversation, I think it was Ben and I had a couple episodes back where we were talking about like app streaming and deep linking and all that kind of stuff. And I never understood why we didn't see more of that in Angular. Like why wasn't Angular doing this kind of stuff? And now that this is coming out, it's starting to make a little more sense. They're targeting pretty heavily the iOS and Android community and trying to get people to use Firebase as the backend for that, So they've got like AdMob integration, AdWords integration, just all kinds of stuff around the phone.
They've got native invites, like an invite system. So I guess the hesitation I had with Firebase originally when I was looking at it probably like 2-3 years ago was the fact that the limitations on how complex your data schema could be, and your queries and your mutations, your equivalent of Meteor methods. So Firebase is not like Meteor in that you're never hosting it. It's completely hosted. There's no option to host your own like there is with Meteor, and there's no run your arbitrary code on the server, right? You're not writing publications and methods. So there's a lot of like complex logic in my methods, and how would I translate that over to Firebase? there's validations, like, so it has its own user system, so you can say which users have permissions to read or write whatever docs. But it's at the doc level. You can't go like intra doc level. Like in some of my publications, I only serve up certain fields to the client. You wouldn't be able to like hide those fields, and if you just gave read access to a doc. And then there's some validation rules that you can use. And that's sort of like coding. Like there's one example: foo.validate new data.isString and new data.val.length is less than 100. So that's sort of a little bit like arbitrary logic there. But it's still a far cry from like whatever you want to do inside of your methods. Have you ever tried using Firebase?
I didn't know. Like I went straight from like Rails and Backbone and doing a little bit of Rails and Angular to straight into Meteor back in 2013. So kind of didn't really look at the landscape. I just really enjoyed how Mongo and Mini Mongo and kind of like the DDP bridge in between handled a lot of this kind of stuff for me. But, you know, it's probably the biggest thing to me here is the pricing. Like I'm looking at the pricing and going, wow, this seems significantly cheaper. Like they have now, so for free, you get 100 simultaneous connections. And to put that into perspective, Crater's doing, I think, 500,000 page views a month. And we're doing somewhere between 130 to 200 at peak simultaneous connections. So, you know, I think like Crater couldn't be on the free plan, basically, if we were to kind of use Firebase as the backend. But looking at it, you know, you get unlimited for the $25 a month plan. But then, you know, there's a little footnote that says there's an initial limit of 10,000 simultaneous database connections. That's still a lot of people, you know, like I think a couple of the bigger Meteor apps like Mixmax and Classcraft peak up over that at certain times of the day. But
what are those or Crater's total database gigabytes or megabytes stored in Mongo?
Oh yeah, it's not that big.
Mine is really low.
Yeah. I think I'm at like it's like 200 megs maybe. Like it's
So the $25 a month plan on Firebase gives you 2.5 gigabytes.
Right.
Yeah.
I don't know that data is going to matter. Like I feel like by the time you have 2.5 gigabytes, unless you're like collecting real-time analytics, you're probably not going to use that much data, you know,
right.
Some kind of user created platform or something. You know, looking at these other limits, it doesn't really seem like that big of a deal. And you can get like pay-as-you-go upgrades on the gigabytes, like a gig of storage costs you $5, you know?
Right. And so they have like an integrated, their version of S3. Like what's the app you use that has like the maximum S3 total size? Mine's probably still under a gigabyte.
Yeah. I mean, I ran, this is like digging back to Rails, like we had 12 gigs worth of photos in an app that I built called Tasty Planner. And it was all about like recipes. And so people would upload nice photos. And then it was kind of like all recipes and people would upload photos of their version, you know, and so we had multiple photos for each recipe. But yeah, I still don't, I mean, I don't know. I feel like, again, this is probably in line, right? They're charging you in a similar way to S3. An extra 5 gigabytes costs you 13 cents. Like, this is just cheap. And then an extra 5 gigabytes of transfer costs you 60 cents. So, I mean, yeah, maybe that stuff totals up once you get up there, but at the same time, like, if you have,
it's gonna be hard to get up there.
Yeah, if you have that many users, like you probably have a team of people that are giving a crap about this problem at that point, right?
Yeah.
So I don't know. Like this is very, very interesting. And I wonder, like, I feel like this is gonna maybe shake up some things in the hosting space a little bit. Could be interesting.
Yes, the other thing I was thinking about, besides how complicated your methods are, is how you how complicated your data could be. So like you run into this problem with Mongo if you're coming from SQL land, is like how do I join between different tables? I don't want to do everything in embedded documents because that's inefficient with DDP. And so you use like publish with relations, or you duplicate data. And their solutions, so they don't have an equivalent for joins. They don't have an equivalent for like publish with the relations. What they tell you to do is, like, if you have a many-to-many relationship, like users to groups, you store all the groups under the user, and you store all the users under the group. So you're duplicating that. So whenever you change it, you have to change both. So that's the solution. And I mean, it works. And so it looks like it has a broad range of like data schemas you could, or applications you could have if you just format it in this duplicated way. Doesn't seem that bad. It would work.
Yeah. Huh. Yeah. Yeah, it's kind of interesting when you think about it. Like, Meteor is really not all that different from Firebase, right? And this kind of taps into our next story as well, because if you think about, like, Meteor has a back end and a front end, but the front end can really be deployed anywhere, right? You can even just put the HTML, CSS, and JavaScript up on S3 and serve that up, and then it can connect into the back end and get all the DDP data that it needs. And so it's very, very similar to Firebase in that regard. It's just the front end initially came with a lot of tooling, but now you can replace that with whatever you want.
Right.
So let's talk about that story. I did not mean to segue that cleanly, but holy schmoly, I did. Tell me about
the React Webpack.
Yes.
All right, so there's a blog post called React with Webpack plus Meteor as a backend, where someone is using Meteor, but decides to not use the Meteor build tool and instead use Webpack. And it's really funny because as soon as I saw the title, I thought about this tweet from Shashko like last week or something, where he said decided to try not using meteor.js for once. I feel like I need a PhD in Webpack just to get source maps, client NPM, and basic reloading. And he actually quotes it. So I didn't actually have time to read it, finish reading the article. What does it say, and why is he doing Webpack?
Yeah, so I think for him, Webpack's faster, right? And it offers interesting things that you can do as far as I don't know. Like, I don't know how fast we'll see this kind of stuff coming out of Meteor. And so I understand his want to do this. We need code splitting. So if you think about it, when you connect to Crater, you're going to download, 1.5 MB of JavaScript, which includes the HTML that's been compiled into Blaze templates. And you don't need all that, right? Like, some guy Googling something and ending up on Crater doesn't need that 1.5 MB to render the site. And that's a bad experience, right? Like, we want to get to this point where, like, you have just enough to get the site loaded, and then, like, as you need more things, we can just send it to you. So, this is the idea of, like, streaming sites to people, or using web workers to kind of, like, send the initial bit and then send the rest.
Does Webpack currently do that? Allow you to do that?
I don't think Webpack is at the point where it can do the streaming, but you can do. Let's see. He mentions hot module replacement, but I also think that there is a way to do code splitting, which can at least help somewhat. Not necessarily as far as all the way to streaming, but if you think about it, like, if I have an admin part of Crater and I have a user-facing part of Crater, like, I only want to deliver the user-facing code when you're hitting the user-facing part of the app. And so
Webpack would let you separate the admin client templates and logic into a separate bundle that only gets requested by the browser as soon as you change routes from, like, / to /admin.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, and so, and then it goes even further, right? So if you think about, like, we're using the import syntax now, so we can say, like, import this file. I ran across this the first time I heard of the idea. It's called tree shaking with Rollup. JS. But it's the idea that you can import the code that you need, right? Let's say you're depending on a library.
And it doesn't package the entire library. It just packages like that function and all the dependencies.
Yep.
Through like static analysis or
Yeah.
wow.
Yeah. So like that's going to be huge in my opinion. So Webpack 2's got that. If you want to use it now, you can use something like rollup.js and it'll do it for you. So yeah, it's really interesting to me as well, right? Because if you think about it, even if we got code splitting, we've come to this point where we're relying on, well, like there was a post in the Meteor forums about, like if you rely on accounts Twitter, it's bringing along Blaze for you for free, and if you're using React, that's terrible. Like I don't want to make someone download Blaze just because I want Twitter accounts. Authentication, like just yeah, anyway, that's a whole nother rant. But so like, you know, if they can figure out that I'm not even using that's even better. Like, so I think this is awesome to see in that regard. The thing that I maybe don't like, I've never been a huge fan of Asteroid, and I feel like you're leaving some of the good parts of the Meteor ecosystem behind if you're not going to bring Tracker and Minimongo along with DDP. And at that point, like, why even use the backend? Just because you feel like prototyping with Mongo is better? Like, you don't have to specify a schema, and therefore you can maybe work faster on the backend. But like, if your project's going to get big enough and you're going to have more than one developer on there, the schema is usually a good thing. So I don't know. I don't know if I agree with the second part of the article. I get why Webpack is interesting. I'm not sure I would agree with, you know, using Meteor as the backend here in this way. And so to me, the smarter way is for, at some point, I'm kind of hoping, now that we're seeing what Meteor 1.4 looks like, maybe Meteor 1.5 will come with like releasing to NPM. And so if Tracker and Minimongo were on NPM, we could just put them there, you know? We don't have to care about it. And we can connect into any old backend, and we'll be able to use Webpack, and, you know, huzzah, the world is great.
Right.
So that's the way I'd love to see it happen. I was hoping that it would happen relatively quickly, at least for some of the popular pieces, but it doesn't look like that's necessarily the case. But again, you have to remember they're working with a much smaller team as well. So that's definitely new. Like, a lot of people left or got pushed onto Apollo. So I think there's like 3 people, core MDG, and now there's community maintainers too. So hopefully that helps.
Well, what happens to Meteor when they don't have the data system anymore? They're basically just like a build tool.
Yeah, but it's a bad build tool, right? Like, it's not a great build tool. Like, maybe the Cordova integration is interesting, but I think a lot of people are feeling like, I don't know. Like, how? Okay, let's ask. You build a startup on Cordova. How are you feeling about React Native? I know you've dabbled with it.
I mean, I would love to have the time to rewrite in React Native, get a much better user performance interaction.
Do you feel like that is because of Blaze or because of Cordova, or the combination maybe?
It's both, but I mean, even if you were using React or Angular 2 even, which might even have better performance than React, there'd still be situations where your templates were so complex that you'd have noticeable delays on the user. So yeah, I mean, if you're doing something new, I'd definitely recommend React Native.
Yeah.
But it's kind of funny. I also came from the Rails and Backbone land, and I remember Kieran well, I guess pre-backbone, I remember querying a lot for load time, page load time, and I read the experts like Steve Solders, whatever that book was, page speed, and I just like since changing to Meteor, I've been completely like inured to I haven't even looked at the size of my client payload, and especially with Cordova, like it's already there, and after 1.3, you're not even have to re-download the whole thing. You're only refetching certain files.
Yeah, but you do still have to wait while those files load into memory while the app's starting. And so maybe that's not terrible, but it could be better, right? And so I don't know. Like we had, I did some work for a company, a startup, a Y Combinator startup, and they were based on Rocket Chat, and they were doing some Cordova stuff as well. And it wasn't good. Like we were up in like 4 to 5 second range before they would see a UI kind of rendering onto the phone. And
is that like they're rendering before the data arrives, or are they waiting 4 or 5 seconds for the data to arrive?
They were waiting for the data to arrive. So like we went in and sped up like the data arriving, and like there's weird choices that Meteor made. Like they chose Node, but they also chose to make all publications blocking. So that was weird. Like you have to wait for a publication to finish its work before someone else will get a response from the Node server. That actually seems kind of counterintuitive to me. Like the point of Node is to let it do its event loop thing and figure out what goes where. And it's not like we're waiting for a return value from a publication.
Right.
Like if you were, that would
makes more sense with methods.
Yeah. So but we have a way to unblock a method, right? Like they give us this.unblock. So, but there's a good Airnoda put a library out that allows.
Yeah, I use that package for unblocking publications.
And I hacked the crap out of it and just made it unblock everything, and like we dropped half the load time right there. But I think the other part is just the files were so large, like they have to load before you can do things.
You mean like load into by the browser reading it off of disk into memory, right?
Yeah.
I just think of that as like an order of magnitude faster than like fetching it over the network. That I just like don't even pay attention.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, we were still at the point where it just felt too slow on the phone.
And then this is just the startup time, not like interacting with it after.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, like once you got there, like it was fine, but everybody in the land of instant gratification, if you can't get what you want, like the competitor is going to deliver it faster.
Did you try Ground?
Huh?
Did you try GroundDB?
We did not. No, they are currently evaluating other technologies besides Meteor to see if they will scale better. So,
because I mean, like mobile apps, I think in native land, like you're always storing data on the client, and it definitely makes sense that you're opening this multiple times, and you're going to be using almost the same or all the same data from before the last time.
Yeah, I think there's some tricks you can do, right? Like if you look at Slack, like there's some delay where they render like an animated GIF, and it looks like it's loading the data in, and like that would help some. And then you're right, like if you had GroundDB, you could have a little bit of data there, and then like as it's fetching and updating, then the UI can show the update once it gets it. So,
right.
Yeah, which is similar to like if you look at Instagram, that's how it works, right? Like I open my Instagram feed,
it has the old ones.
Is at the top, and then it's like fetching, and then boom, you get the update.
Right.
So yeah, that would probably make sense. But it was a limited project, so we'll see where they go from here. But I don't know. Like this is an interesting post to me, and I encourage Julian to continue to find ways that work that makes sense to him. I don't know that it would make sense to me. But probably the kicker here is he talks about Redux at the end, and it's like I honestly would be looking pretty hard at Apollo if I'm already using Redux. I'm already using like Webpack and React and all those kinds of things. Like I just don't know if Asteroid makes a ton of sense to me here.
Do you know what Apollo's gonna recommend for their build system? Are they going to say use Meteor, or here's a way to use Webpack for Apollo? Or
Well, I think there's no real build integration, right? Like you just pull in the Apollo client as far as that's concerned.
Yeah.
On the back end, they've got the Express integration, so you can just spin up the Express server that's going to serve the GraphQL endpoint. I think we still don't know what real time is going to look like for Apollo. I think if it happens, it'll be interesting. I just don't know, like, to me, I think they'll be able to provide tools that'll say, like, you can tell it that there's a real-time update, but they're not, like, it's not going to be like as deep as the Mongo integration is right now with Meteor. But
you're talking about real time in the sense of like polling is not real time, like.
Well, yeah, I mean, polling's fine. It's just like
I think you're going to be adding polling soon. I think that's simple.
It's just a lot of times it can be a little expensive on the CPU side. So, which was a major problem they had early on with Meteor and Mongo, which is why they went to the uplog. But you look at, like, you were talking earlier about the Rethink DB change feeds. You're talking about Mongo uplog tailing. Like, everyone does it slightly differently, and so you're gonna have to, like, you're probably gonna have these little drivers that you'll have to build for each type of database, like Postgres triggers, SQL triggers to, like, get those updates coming out, those kinds of things. Like, it's probably not gonna be terrible, but it does seem like it's going to be a lot of work to get each one of those done. So, and maintain them in a good way. Yeah, but I think it'll be interesting, and to me, in the long run, like, that's kind of what I got my eyeball on.
Yeah, I'm excited about Apollo.
Yeah, in regards to this post, that's like what I'm paying attention to. So, just my take on it. All right. Well, thank you, Lauren. I really appreciate you stepping in.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah. All right. Well,
you should make the beard permanent.
Yeah, permanent. Everyone keeps saying that. I don't know. Maybe I'll go blue. I don't know. I don't know if I like the mix. We'll see. It looks like someone punched my nose, and it just kind of.
Oh, yeah, it didn't occur to me.
Yeah. Yeah. So, as always, thank you to Modulus and DigitalOcean for sponsoring this show. They help me hire a staff behind the scenes. So if you are looking for hosting, consider supporting those fine organizations. Everyone, like, Lauren's in the Slack chat room. I think you can testify to how awesome it is from time to time when you're stuck somewhere and someone's like, "Oh, I know how to fix that," and you're like, "Boom, that was 10 times better than Stack Overflow." But yeah, so if you want to get in there, Patreon, patreon.com/Meteor Club. It's still Meteor Club. And once you sign up, I can add you to the Slack, which is pretty awesome.
Yeah, support Josh.
Yeah, and you can always go check on the latest news and upvote stories. If you want to see us talk about the stories, I always forget to mention this, you can go and upvote, and I pick mainly the most upvoted stories for us to talk about. So Crater.io, get out there and vote. All right, guys, we'll see you next week.
This video has been a Space Dojo production. You can click the Learn More button to find out more about us at spacedojo.com. Or you can click the subscribe button to get notified about new videos we put out each week. Thanks for watching.